Saturday was like a blur. So here's a question. Any resources you can think of that help you understand Node?
Okay.
Because I went looking for some online, and some of them are very obscure in the way they talk about it. Like, they don't talk about it sequentially.
Okay.
They don't go, yeah. Which most other technologies, they're very definitive.
Right. Okay.
But, like, for instance, Carson would talk about things, and I hadn't seen anything about the concepts he was sharing, like the ARGV or, and stuff like that. So I was like, and you have to wrap your brain around it because it's backwards.
Right.
You're writing.
Right.
Yeah.
Process.argv and all this stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So I just wondering, like, if you think of anything, because, I looked for it on even Free Code Camp, and, like, some of the stuff they have you do, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you guys mostly use it for?
For Node.js?
Yeah.
So, JavaScript is front end.
Right.
So Node.js kind of helps you with the back end stuff.
So is it very popular?
It's very popular.
It's very
these
popular.
days. Yeah.
Okay.
Within 5 years.
I think finding maybe the major terminology might be the really place for me to go.
Okay.
I don't know about other people.
All right.
I saw a few people that had the same look.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can imagine. Yeah, it's not a very easy thing to.
It's not very random or routine. Is
right. No.
Yeah.
There was a lot of EVM music there. Yeah, there's fire here. All of that is awesome. Of course. Somebody
And then I installed the latest one, and then I uninstalled it, and I installed it.
Yeah, no, I'm still like 10 down. Yeah, no, that version is fine. As long as the major version, which don't as long as it's like it's sort of. Oh yeah, it's still everything's taken off, right? It's like on that road stuff. There was one key that is one I have tickets to. I'll go see. And that one is last fall. Downtown Phoenix, Steel Park or something. It's killing. And I didn't even know that it was a spot. I really was a downtown Phoenix on it. But it sold so poorly this year.
Daniel, we weren't supposed to submit the project individually on.
No, there's the team lead.
Okay, just I was just making sure it's still someone doing stuff.
Yeah.
Only the best. Only the best. Let's go.
Maricopa colleges got canceled today.
All of them? That's crazy. Huh.
Because of a low drizzle.
Yeah, my mom's a high school teacher and they got a half day.
Can you guys hear me on the stream?
It's pretty good in here. Like,
Yeah.
I stayed late at work.
That's my
Thursday? No, Friday. I have one. Wednesday. I can't remember what day it was. I was there till like 7:30. I was leaving the thermostat. It was 73. What the hell? Yeah, it's so cold.
My work this morning was.
Yeah.
The rain was, of course, just making it chillier than it's going to be. There was still on the roof. Like, I had a hoodie on my desk. I had the big thing. I said, well, it's kind of nice to feel this. Yeah. There's that point in the year where it transitions and you really get out of the shower and people the rest of the country are like, feel my bathroom in 60 degrees. Before you before my dad's a shop, some fires. Yeah, both we could fly out. Because you have it's just a world I don't want to live in.
Oh, gotcha.
How is it?
Any place where you have
No,
no
good to hear
one
that.
sidewalk out there,
Yeah.
5 from the city.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
what?
I, yes, I'm just like, I never heard from them back when I was trying to get their phone number, but I assume there's no phone number for them.
There is. Fire away, my friend. No. Just kidding.
On the food services, things like that.
Yeah.
Is there a point of no return? Or can you like do a quick catch up?
So like, all right, I will give you. This is what I like doing. I'll give you my student point of view, like from me as a student, and then me as an SSN.
Right.
As an SSN, yes, there's a point of return. Also, as a student, oh man, like it's very. I completely understand how a lot of things. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't do all my career service homework until like the last 2 years of class. Should I tell you that? Absolutely not. Did I do it? I'll stick by my guns. Yeah.
Fair enough, because I had a few people tell me the same thing. They were like, yeah, I didn't even know.
Yeah,
Well,
I missed the
they were
first
in
one, so I was
another
like, well, I
class.
guess there's no point in
Well, I like it. Never know.
Everything has been recorded.
Yeah, it's like, do they record you? Do I have to
Yeah,
censor
they
all this?
record it.
Yes, yes, I do.
That's exactly what's
And that's when I get
How's
Thursday
it going?
meetings and the weeks and it's
Good.
good Santa's.
I don't recall that. You have audio tape?
It's literally recorded. I can do it anyway.
Well, I kind of wondered, because they pop up quicker than you think.
What's cool about career service? Choose this, right? It's something for career services. Choose this.
Okay.
So you have everyone's your resume. Portfolio, resume, everything. Like, they'll just run a week.
Okay.
So there's no point. Let's do it. We're gonna help you. We don't do anything.
That's what
I understand as a student, it's difficult. I get that. But there is a benefit to doing it.
I was going to ask you that. Because I started doing it, but then I remember you told me you hadn't done it. No J.
My final project, I didn't have a portfolio.
Yeah.
So my buddies built a portfolio.
I'm good.
Yeah, it's literally why.
You're
So
good.
going to our service.
Right.
Let's just build something.
Oh, wow.
We did.
Wow.
Like, I'll be your friend.
Well, I mean, I get what they do. In fact, that was the sales point of this weekend for me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of places don't have that.
What's really cool is that again, if you're up to date on that, and like can command like things for them to run with, they'll send it. Send it.
Okay.
Send it.
Yeah.
Send it. Send it.
Alright.
Like, people that got these things because of that.
Well, I know in talking to people, it's really hard in the sense that you're building a LinkedIn.
I was like, what?
You're building a LinkedIn and you're building
You don't see that
other
big spider?
things.
Dude, please stop doing that. It's October. I'm super scared of ghosts. I feel like I've said that in this class before. Like, don't do it.
Man, I'm so sad you go CPI.
Yeah.
But they were telling me the hardest thing is like theoretically you got to think to yourself later. So like when you're doing LinkedIn and you're doing these other things, you got to think about what you hope to be versus what you
What you
are.
are, and it's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard for me actually.
yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to start the survey.
I want to sign in. That's what I want.
Well, it doesn't negotiate
You
with
can't do it.
you. It doesn't negotiate.
I also want
with
to check attendance. I want to do. I would love to do my job. Actually, I want you guys to just start writing me notes. You know, Jason, like, I hope you're having a good day.
Present.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really got sick because I realized I missed the middle of the text. And told me.
A lot of streamers there.
Yeah. Quite a few
Everyone
people.
got streamed because of rain.
I gotta tell you, normally I drive from Mesa to here. Once you hop on the freeway, it's like jockeying to find a spot to get from. I think I go from Dobson Road to Gilbert Road. It's like a freaking. It's like a race car thing. You know, you gotta like find a slot, move over. So it was like nothing today.
Yeah, it was actually.
It's like, would they all stay home because they thought it was gonna rain?
Pretty much. They wouldn't have been wrong.
People in Arizona don't know how to drive in the rain.
They stay off the roads.
Yeah. Well, that's probably smart because I've driven next to those people before. It's coming down the mountain from Flagstaff, which by the way is worse than the other side of the mountain in Flagstaff. Due to the big 4x4.
Now that we have
the roads are icy, covered in snow. This is years and years ago. And this dude is like, it would have been prudent to go 35, 40 because you don't know what you're going to hit. You might hit mostly snow, but if you're nice and you're going too fast, you'd end up in a ditch or something. So next thing I know, I'm going down the road like a snail, 35, 40 miles an hour. You get down to this turn and you see the big 4x4 in the ditch, wheels up. Yeah. It's like, man, going fast doesn't necessarily work out for us.
I was coming back from Colorado. We were doing a snowboarding trip after it was a huge snowstorm came in the night before we were going to leave. I think it was over there too. Although, but we decided to go this back way because all the roads were kind of slowed down. So let's go this back way and walk quickly. Just been fog and pretty crap. Driving on. I was doing like maybe 30, 35, and I hit ice, and the truck just starts turning sideways.
There's not a whole lot of leeway with ice. Like I've had two, growing up in the Midwest, I've had two, maybe 3 times where I was going down a snowy freeway. Luckily, in one of them, it was nobody. It was like Christmas Eve I was driving.
I know.
And I could have patched it. They always told me to turn into the spin change and put the straight new wheels on. But that doesn't change the fact that it's speed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. Going that fast, and it rotated pretty slow, but I was like, there's 2-lane roads.
Kind of going.
And I guess I'm either going to go into this ditch or I'm going to straighten it out.
Yeah, it's kind of.
The first time I've ever driven any kind of facing or snowy weather. I was quite thankful I did a lot of drifting.
And they say video games teach you nothing.
You know, if you can handle the visual input growing up, I think anybody video games are these things that you want to do that you're like doing that.
Yeah, between that and that, I think it was like on this project, I was taking the UTVs out here. I had it in 2-wheel drive, and I had 65 kilos. You don't know that you're telling? Oh, really? They're good. But after skipping the tops, a little bit into it, back in, so it's coming around. 70 miles per hour.
Wow. Especially actually putting in. So we're like, what? Oh, okay. Everything was that. Cloudy.
Oh.
It's a big one. I think it's almost Sunday, maybe 73 hours of testing. It's very close to
It's like 2-hour drive, 2-wheel drive. Last hour was
All right, good evening. We'll go ahead and start. Before we start, Jason is here. He's going to walk through some of the announcements, and then we will start the lecture. All right?
We got time I shoot first.
Yeah. Give it up for Jason.
One day at a time. Streamers, I'm disappointed in you. So just, I want to make that clear. I'm definitely calling you guys out. You need to be here, rain or shine. Come to class. But guys, I saw your projects. I was super excited. I'm sorry I couldn't be here. I want to kind of commend you for getting over this third hump. I really, really, really wanted to come in here and tell you personally that now that we're getting into Node, like front end might have been hard, but this is where we really like should come to class, pay attention, ask questions. I'm hoping. Do you guys have study groups yet? Raise your hands. No? Yeah? Nick, put your hand down. I would recommend getting a study group, connecting with people, ask me questions. I really want to be a resource or connect with you or anything I can do to kind of put you in pockets with people, because this kind of next portion of back end definitely is really challenging. I'm not going to mince words or try to, sugarcoat anything. So I'm really hoping that you guys can find a study group or ask questions, rely on each other. Remember that you guys are this community. Carson, Daniel, Nick, Will, everybody wants to help you out. So please, please, please utilize us, ask us questions. Remember that I'm always here just to help out. But really, more than anything, I'm proud of your progress thus far. I definitely sit behind the scenes and kind of critique your code where I can, and I'm more impressed because people in later cohorts than mine keep iterating on code, and that's really cool to see. You guys are trying things that I probably would have never tried, so that's really neat. So I'm always here. We want to be a resource. We want to help you out. Make sure you find a study group or talk to anything you can really to help yourself out. We just want to make sure as a team that we're helping you out. Okay? Cool? Yep. That's all I got. I'm just going to hang out. And yeah, thank you. Give it up for Jason. Woo! Thanks, everybody.
By the way, Jason, we got a lot of comments on the Slack chat.
Yeah, they were like popping up.
Good.
I should, yeah.
Call out. Screaming's hard. Jason, a savage.
Yeah, told you guys day one. I can't lie to you. It's like.
Oh, Lord.
All right. That was the last one. All right, let's go ahead and start our lecture today. So Node.js part 2 or day 2. All right. I heard some comments from the Saturday class. How was that? How was Node.js? Okay.
It makes backend a little bit more easier because of the fact that you don't need the HTML to actually be functional.
It makes it more easier. And what was the reason?
Because you don't need the front end to make things work.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm thankful for Node.js because we don't have to learn another new language like Python.
That is actually one of the plus points of Node.js. That's probably the only plus point.
Thanks for sharing.
I have to write JavaScript on front end. What were they thinking? I have to write Node.js, same JavaScript for back end also. That's like the worst and worst situation. All right, so yeah, Node.js. So what did you guys understood from what is Node.js? Eric, I'll pick on you. Because what did you understand Node.js?
Well, I understood it was a couple things. Like, for instance, it's a way of talking efficiently with the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did read something in preparation for class on Saturday that kind of confused me.
Okay.
It talked about ports on your computer
mm-hmm.
and about how it uses your computer like a server.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not going to tell you I completely understood what it meant, but that was kind of what I gathered out of it.
Right. So you were saying Node.js is a way of communicating with the backend, right? That's correct. And more clearly, Node.js is the backend. It's the backend. Right. So we were seeing JavaScript as a client side. We wrote some client side code. Well, this came around almost 10 years ago, but 5 years I would say was more popular. If 5 years ago you would have asked me, hey, I want to write some backend code, can I do that in JavaScript, right? That's like blasphemy right over there. Well, no, that's not even possible. So then, Node.js came about, and one of the reasons was that programmers who were writing JavaScript, they were kind of dependent on a different language, and they wanted to have one language to rule all the web. And that's how Node.js came about. That it's a JavaScript. You don't have to learn any new syntax. Yeah, there are a few different things you will have to learn.
What did you use prior?
Yeah, so I'll get to that. So not even prior, in these days also, we use, so backend languages are mostly Java, Python, let's see, C#. There's some backend, there's a lot of backend in C# also, PHP. So these are the main ruling languages of the backend. And this is not my biased opinion. These languages are still the rulers of backend. Node.js is good. It's but it hasn't. These languages, for example, Java has stood the test of time. These have been there for a long time. You have a lot of test cases written for them, a lot of unit testing, a lot of testing has been done, and they have been kind of proven for like last 20 years. Node.js, came about like 10 years ago, 5 years ago. It became more popular. A lot of companies are using it, and it's I kind of funny when you go to Node.js site, they have those companies written over there, Google, Lyft, Uber, or a couple of more. And you're like, whoa, these companies are using it. I'll be honest, just don't get tricked. These guys are using it, but it's not they have replaced their whole backend for Node.js. They're using it for some of the products. Node.js is good, but again, it's still very young. It's proving itself, but it hasn't completely proven. So it's kind of not as resilient as some of the backend languages such as Java, and this is my unbiased opinion. And so, but Node.js is good, and the advantage that Andres was saying that you don't have to learn a new language. It's getting very popular, since it's kind of environment for JavaScript. Again, it's not a library, it's not a framework, it's kind of like a total environment. If you read about it, Node.js is written in C, C++, a little bit of JavaScript. It's not like a JavaScript library. It's kind of encompasses a lot of things. It's called Node.js. Like Node, you will see Node.js. There's no JavaScript extension. There's no JavaScript file. It's just like a fun way they came up with the name Node.js. So that's what Node.js is. So it is the backend, and we will see how it will work. So your front end, which is written in JavaScript, is going to communicate with your backend, which is also now written in basically JavaScript or Node.js. That's what Node.js basically is. Some of the examples that you guys are seeing right now are very beginners, but they are very important. Coming weeks, we'll see more advanced concepts. That's where the real power in Node.js lies. But these are the concepts, and these are the simple cores that we need to learn before we get to that, right? So right now, you guys must be like, well, what's the advantage of this? I get it. You won't see the bigger picture right now. But once you learn, when we go into week 13, 14, when there's database and all kind of stuff, you will see how these come together. All right? Any questions on just the concept, Node.js? How we have to endure more JavaScript? Anything? Okay. So what? This is the first exercise, but we'll do this together. I'm not going to, just to refresh what was going on when we started. Okay. So the first thing it says, start with a blank JavaScript file, create a Node application, and then output true and false, right? If the two numbers are equal, then output true, otherwise false. Here's the good part. I don't have to write any more HTML to, run my script, right? I can just write a JavaScript file and test my code out, right? So let's see the first thing. Olga, how do I know that I have Node installed? It's not that bad. It's an easier question. So how do I know I have Node installed in my computer?
Well, you can do node space dash vs.
Yeah. Minus vs.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just v.
No, just
Oops, why am I writing 0? Okay, everybody has that. Everybody got installed and all, right? All right, awesome. So let's go ahead and start this one. Let me create a new file here. I will call it solution3.js. Oops. Okay, so now I have Node.js installed. Okay, and you guys must have seen on Saturday a variable called process.argv, right? George, what do you think is the data type for this variable? Oops, not processing instruction. I am not doing so good today. What is going on? Process. Okay. Dot argv. What's the data type of this variable? What do you think? So we have strings, numbers, booleans, objects. What is this one? Square brackets.
Or array.
Array, yes. Yep. So process.argv, first thing to note, is an array. Now we'll see what that array is, but it's an array. So this means it has index. It has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 indexes, right? Okay. So if I do console.log this thing, okay, so this should give me something, right? All right. So if I run this program, let me go inside. This is 10. So, okay. And how do I run this? I will say node and then my file name. Okay. And that's it. Node and my file name. All right. So what do I see on the screen? I see a path. So going back to the code, process.argv is an array. The first index of that array gives you the installation path of Node.js on your computer. All right. That is always going to be the case. Every time index 0 is going to be the path of Node installation. All right. Since this is an array, I can do this too. Okay. The index 1 or the second part of your array will give you the path of your JavaScript file, or the file that you are running using Node.js, right? Node solution.js, it gives you the path. All right. Now anything after that is what you pass in this command line, and that is called argument. That's where the word arg is coming from. It says argument. All right. So anything that I write after this would be considered argument 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Oops. All right. So I can do 2. So this means, so the first is the path, second is the solution.js path, and the third would be whatever I'm passing it in. Okay. Again, process.argv is an array. The first 2 indexes are fixed. You can't do anything about it. For index number 2, that's where your input comes in. Okay. And that is where it stops. You can have argument 3, 4, 5, then you have to pass in multiple things. Okay. I'm going to type this in and then we will go back to our questions. So I have true. Let's say I'm passing false. All right. Any questions so far? Good. All right. So let's go back to our README and see what the question was. Question is, if the 2 numbers are equal, then output true, or otherwise output false. Okay. So I'm getting 2 numbers from my Node.js. Okay. So I have 2 numbers. Let's say 2 and 3. If they're equal, I type out true. If they are not, then I type out false. Yes.
Is it possible to make the font on terminal larger?
Is it possible to do what?
Make your font larger on terminal?
On the terminal. Okay. Yes, it is possible.
Thank you.
Is it good? More? Okay. All right. So these would be my arguments. And then what I'm doing is I'm checking if these 2 are equal, then I will say true, otherwise false. So simple. I could do this as if process.argv argument 2 is equal to process.argv 3. Okay. So I will say console.log true. Okay. And then else okay. All right, so since it's 2 3 they are not equal. If it is 3 3, just say true. Okay, simple. Any questions? All right, so these are just the basic concept of Node.js, and we'll be looking at some more features today. But make sure you guys understand this very well, so that going forward it's a little bit easier when we get into more complicated stuff. All right, let's do the bonus really quickly. Check if the two numbers are both multiples of 7. Again, output true if they are, or output false if they're not. So as far as multiple goes, what do? We divide each number by 7 and see if the remainder is 0. This means it's a multiple of 7. If it's not, then it's false. Okay, and how do you find the remainder? We use the mod operator. Okay, the percentage sign. So I can quickly do this. I can say if process.argv to mod 7 is equal to 0. Okay, and I'm doing the same thing, so I'll just copy this. 3 console.log true, else console.log false. Okay, all right, simple. Just check, do the mod and see if it is divisible by 7. This means it works. If it's not, then no. So let's say I have this, I make it 7. False, false, both are not. So let me do 7 and 14. So you see the last one, true. This means both are divisible. If you want all true, then I would just do 7 7. Both are equal, both are divisible by 7. All right, that was just a math operation. How you can perform some operations if you want using Node.js. All right, good thing is I don't have to write HTML or anything. I can just run this. There's a now you see these are if and else statements. I can just write this in like one line too. Just want to show you. So in the first part I'm saying if these two are equal, then type it out true. If they are not, then false, right? So I can do this whole thing in just one line. And this is the refactoring part. So what we do is in our regular day is that we write the code out and then we look at it. If it works, it's fine, passes all the unit test, everything looks good. Then we go back and look at our code and see if we can refactor it, try to come up with a more efficient solution if possible. So more easier would be, I can do the whole thing in just like one line. So I can say if process argument is equal to process.argv 3. That's it. The whole from line number 6 to 11, this can be written in just one line in line 13. What is happening is I'm saying if these two arguments, check the condition for these two arguments and just console.log whatever the return type is. Okay, so if these are equal, it will say true. So console.log true. If they are not, it's going to say false. So see the second true, and if they are not, it's going to say false, the second one. Okay, so I can just write this in like one line. This is just another way to do it. I can even do this one in one line too. Okay, so I can say console.log. Okay, let me copy this. And then this is just one of the ways. If you find any other way, that's also good. Okay, what is happening over here? I'm saying that, you know, find the remainder for the first one, right? And then find the remainder of the second one. Okay, so remainder could be either 0 if it is divisible by 7, for example 14 by 7, the remainder is 0 because it's completely divisible, right? So my first argument is saying same over here. If it is 0, then I will get a value of 0 over here, plus if this is also 0, I will get another value of 0. And add them up. If this equal to 0, this means both are divisible. All right, if any one of them is not 0, this means that I have a remainder, it's not 0, so this means I cannot divide this equally, right? So let's suppose I have a remainder of 1, and then I have a remainder of 2. I have some number over here that gives me a remainder of 2. All right, so the addition would be 3, which is not equal to 0. So this just means that it's not divisible. Both are not divisible. Again, this is just another way to write it, but this is perfectly fine too. This is just like a shortcut that I'm trying to show you. You know, there's a different ways you can write the same code and come up with a different solution for the same question that you are working on. Okay. Any questions on the regular way of writing it, or any questions on the concept? If this is, you know, you'll get this in time. If not, it's okay. If you get it, that's good. But any questions on the concepts or exercise? Yes.
In terminal, after you type in the name of the file, I guess what determines what numbers you type afterwards? 7, 14, which is divisible by 7.
What was the question?
Why did you choose those numbers being 7 and 14?
Oh, I was trying to show you that so that the solution comes up as true. You can write anything. So right now I was trying to show you that both of these statements come back as true. That's what I was trying to show you. But you can write anything. You can write 15, so it'll come back as false. With just an example. Okay. All right. So what we will do is we'll go ahead and do the next exercise. Okay. Okay. Will is answering that question. Thank you, Will. We'll go ahead with the next one. All right. So the next exercise is we'll see how to use different packages. So Node.js is a big environment, I said, right? It has multiple packages, kind of like libraries inside it, and we need to learn how to use them. So the library that we are going to see right now will allow you to read and write files. Okay? So you have files on your computer. This is going to show you how to read those files, or how to create new files, how to write to those files. Okay? From the server perspective, you know, there's a lot of situation, a lot of use cases. When you get a file, you want to store it, you want to read those files. So this is one of the libraries that you can use in Node.js. And we'll see this exercise is going to serve two purposes. It's going to show you that there are different packages inside Node.js that you can use. And the second is, you know, basically how do you read and write files in Node.js. Okay, so let me go ahead and close this out. Let me create a new one. Write one.js. Okay. Okay. Again, these what I show you are some of the keywords that are specific to Node.js. So first of all, I want to use a package that exists inside Node.js, and we'll see the documentation how you find it out. But let's suppose at this point I know what package I want to use, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is, I'm going to say var variable, and then this could be anything. All right, it's a variable, I can name anything. I'm saying it fs, and you will see why. The second part, require, this is a keyword from Node.js, and what this require is saying is, okay, my program requires a package that exists somewhere in Node.js. Okay, now what is this package? It's called fs, for reading and writing files. What does fs means? It means file system. Okay, awesome. Yeah, you guys already know this. File system.
Wish it was that simple.
Yeah, file system. All right, so so I'm trying to use a package called file system inside Node.js, and I want to use that package to read and write files. Okay, now I want to write file. Andres, what would be the method called? Write file. It's called write file. That's correct. So I will say fs dot write file, and it shows up over here. Kind of nice. It has documentation. I'll show you the Node.js documentation and give you a little bit hints how to read it, but get in the habit of trying to see how to read the documentation. They have a different kind of format. Kind of takes some time to get used to it, but that's format is kind of popular, and that's how you will see most of the documentation. Right. So I have a method called write file, so I will close this. Okay, but this doesn't complete. Okay, so package, I want to write a file, a method exists called write file, and I have to know I do something. Okay, so the first argument to my write file method is the name of the file. Okay, so let's suppose I'm creating a database of movies, so I will say movies.txt. Okay, simple. First argument is name of the file. The second argument is the contents or the data that's going to go inside that file. Okay, now I want to put some movies. Let's see, so I want to put these two movies. Okay, so first is the name of the file, the second is the data or whatever is going inside that. Yes?
You want both of them to be in the same quotes?
These two, yes. So everything within these two quotes is part of the data. So yes, it's going to be within the code. Okay. So this is one argument completely, and this is the first argument. Okay. So the last argument is a function. What do we call that function that I'm passing within the function? Nope. Callback. All right. So this is a callback function because we are passing a function inside a function, and we call it callback, right? Remember, kind of. All right. So the last argument is a callback function. So how do we do the callback function? We declare an anonymous function, all right, and it has its own arguments, open, close, and that's it. Okay. Again, file stream fs.write file method takes in 3 arguments. The first is the name of the file that it is going to write to. The second is the data or the contents of the file. The third is the callback function. The callback functions is when it is done is going to call that function. Okay. Now this callback function takes in 1 argument. It's basically an error. Okay. What this means is if there's any error when you're trying to write to the file, this variable over here will have that message. And this is the syntax for write file. It's nothing that we have done. This is how you have to define write file. Yes?
on W schools at ERR.
Yeah. And I intentionally wrote error because that I'm trying to show you that you can put it anything. You can put as ASD, ABC, it doesn't matter. As long as there's a variable. The important part over here is that there has to exist a variable. You can call it anything. But by convention, we call it ERR, which stands for error. Okay? And the purpose of this is that if there is any error, when you're trying to write to a file, Node.js is going to put that message inside that variable. And then you can access that variable to see what's going on or what happened. And how do I access it? So I will say if error, then I could do console.log error. So this will basically tell me, okay, there's something happened. It will output on my console saying, hey, an error occurred. If there's no error, then this means I've been successful. So I will say console.log movies create, movie file created, something like that. Okay. All right, questions? I'm like so clear today that there's like no question. Oh, fine. Yes, sir.
So the directory is just movies.txt. Where would that be placed?
Yep, good question. Yep, we'll see where that gets placed. When we run this program, we'll see where it gets placed. Good question.
Is there going to be an open, or are we just going to?
Is there going to be what?
Can this create the file it's about to run, or is it going to error out?
It should create the file. Why do you think it will error out?
Somewhere we just can't handle a write and create at the same time.
Right. Good observation. Yes. In this case, if the file doesn't exist, it's going to go ahead and create that file and then write to it. So let's go ahead and give it a try and see. Go back. I'm on 11. Okay, so I'll say node. Movies file created. Did you see, guys, see on the left? It got created on. So if you do not specify anything, if you just give the name, it's going to create it in the folder where your JS file exists. Okay, and if it doesn't exist, which it didn't, it's going to go ahead and create it. Yes.
So what if you have the JS file? You have your main that's running on probably this root level. You call another JS that's running 10 levels deep in folders, and that's the script that then writes the file.
Yep.
Is that file going to go to where that JS?
Yep. Wherever you do the write file. Where you do the write file, that's where it's going to write it. Well, whenever the write file is getting called.
The working directory from where you originally executed, it's going to write 10 folders deep where that JavaScript.
Right. Yep. Yep. To correct that, you would do like you can put like slashes and move it up. Yes.
When I did it right now, I'm running it like I have the entire class downloaded with Node, and I'm running it out of the activities folder, and then I do Node and go into each individual activity. When I ran it right now, it actually put it back in the activities folder, not in the subfolder.
Like in the root folder?
Yeah, just put it in the root folder.
Okay. So it's activity something inside.
Yeah, like you have on yours, like you have 10 command line args. I'm running it like you're in the day 2.
Okay.
Mine wrote it to the day 2 folder. Since I'm running my entire node command, I do node and then specify the activities, UCC or CD into the activity. So it's wherever your base is when you call node.
Oh, I see what. Okay. So it's if I create a folder and go inside that folder and then call this, it's going to create that file wherever this path is.
So if you cd out going back,
Yeah.
and call node and pass in that folder directory, then the file will be.
Well, if I cd back, then I won't be able to call write1.js, right?
Well, you,
Oh, I have to do
maybe
them.
the voice slide path to it. Yeah. You can pass in the path.
So I have to say
Mm-hmm. 11 dash write file.
And is this yes?
You should create a D2.
It should have created where?
It's there at the bottom of day 2.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay, yeah, that's what it is. Okay, all right. So it depends on where you're calling that node from. Okay, just to reiterate, what's happening is whichever current my folder is. So I am in. Let me see. GWD. So I'm in my desktop site day2 folder. If I run it from this path, is going to create my file on this path day2, right? Before that, I was inside my write file. So it gets created inside my whatever this folder is. It's 11-write file. All right. Thank you. Good.
Where did he go? My code's not working.
It went somewhere else. Yes. If there is there any error? I'm trying to think. You guys have any idea how to force the error?
Get rid of the last T on TXT. Give it a file that can't be created. Probably still should be that. Just get a very great a nice big file.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not. It doesn't care about the extension. Might be something else.
Why don't you just do movies?
Huh?
Why don't you just do movies but without any file?
It'll create an empty file.
Yeah, it was just created.
Empty file, but it's just a file type extension.
Okay.
Yeah. This might just give a. Ah, there you go.
Without callback is
So I removed the argument, the content one, and it's giving me an error saying I'm not passing it out. Well, it's kind of mistaken. What happening? It thinks that this is the data. The first is the name. The second, it thinks it's a data or a content one, and the third one is looking for a callback function. So it says there's no callback function. But that's how you can get JavaScript. Duplicate. What was that? Yes, good question. What's going to happen if I already have a file? It will overwrite. So write file is a little bit dangerous. It's going to overwrite your file. So let me fix this and then we will see it overwriting. Okay. So I'm going to remove this. I don't want txt files. Okay, so when I run this, okay, everything looks good. I have my movies txt, and if I say, oops. So it's going to basically overwrite everything. It's going to kind of delete it and then overwrite everything. We'll see how to prevent this, but that's what write file is. Okay, we'll see how to not do this, but basically write file, this is what write file does. Creates a file. If you keep calling it, it will overwrite everything that's been created. All right, questions? Okay, the next one. Okay, all right. Andreas, I want to read the file. What would be the method?
It would be read file.
Read file. Excellent. All right, so I'm going to show you this code without writing because same. So the first line, same, right? The next function is method is called read file. All right. So now what does read file do? Read file will read a file that is of course existing. All right. We'll see what happens if it doesn't exist. It'll probably give you an error saying the file doesn't exist, so it has to exist. So you're reading a file. It also has 3 arguments. The first one is the name of the file that exists that you're trying to read. I'll come back to this one. The third one is a callback function, same as the write file. All right. In write file, the callback had 1 argument, which was error or ERR. Read file has 2, error, and the second one is data. So in write file, we were passing our contents in the second argument, right? We were saying this is my content. So the same content goes into the callback function under the data variable. Okay, this data is going to have the content that is read from the file. Okay, the second one is also important. What UTF is, it says it's called encoding, and what it means is that the characters that you're reading from the file are something, you know, that are more readable, like A, B, C, D, and all the possible characters that are on your keyboard are inside their file. That's what you are telling. If you remove this UTF-8, and by default it will be null, when you read this file, you will see a bunch of like numbers, hexadecimal numbers or something. It doesn't know what to do with it. So for now, make sure you guys put in the second argument, which is UTF-8, stands for encoding, which is UTF-8 encoding. Okay.
Say that again. What does it do?
So what UTF-8 encoding does is it tells that the file contains all the readable characters that are possible on your keyboard. Any character that exists on your keyboard, that's what my file contains. If you take it out, what it does is it doesn't know what the file contains, and it gives you some garbage values like hexadecimal or numbers. It kind of doesn't convert it into anything. It shows you how it's kind of like maybe stored in the in your operating system. Okay, so this is saying more human readable format, and then it's going to come out and read that file. Okay, so let me that's too difficult example. Let me do this. So I'll just do it over here. Read file. Okay. So the first was the name, so I will say movies.txt. Second is my encoding, so I will say UTF-8, and my third is the callback function. This callback function takes in 2 arguments, error and data. Okay, and I'm going to simply if error, I'm going to console log the error. Okay, otherwise I'm going to console log data. So my file already exists over here. The second one, what you will see is it's going to output that contents of that file. Okay, so the first part creates it, the second one goes ahead and, you know, spits it out basically. That's what the read file is doing. Now if I say movies 1, it gives you an error saying file doesn't exist. Okay. No such file or directory open movies 1. That's actually a readable error I have seen in JavaScript. That's kind of surprising. Okay. Right, so this is the read file and write file. Any questions on any one of them? Okay. Let's see. All right, so let's go ahead. You guys are going to go ahead and try this one. Okay, this is you guys are going to use both read and write. Create an application. Best things ever. Parses comma separated elements and console.log. So this is how your output should look like. Okay. There's no input file. You guys are going to create it on your own, and then pass in. Oh, actually, the input file is already there. Is this input file given, or they have to create it? It's given. Okay. All right. So basically, since the file is already there, you guys are using read file. All right. So read the file and parse it so that your final output looks like this. And how does your input file looks like? It looks like this. Whole thing in one line. Okay. See how much time do we have for this one? 15 minutes. So go ahead, start working on it. We'll be going around the room. Halfway through, I'm going to start coding this so that if you guys are stuck anywhere, you guys can take a look at it. Take a look at the hint also, if you guys are getting stuck how to, separate the data out. You guys remember we did use the split in previous exercises when we were doing JavaScript.
This is designed to be a partner activity.
Oh, okay.
Silence is the key.
All right. Let's get together, work together, help your partner out. If you already kind of have a solution in mind, let the other person type it out so that everybody has a better understanding. Yes, it has to be in quotes. No, lowercase.
Did this split numbers. Very good text.
Yeah, it's easier to. Okay, so it's the second.
So I should be able to, all the, I should be able to know and call, I think I did all the other scores.
So this file should be missing this one.
I believe so. Yeah. Because we're all the way down to this one. Oh, you know what? That's why it's not in there.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I thought it was in there.
Yeah.
I'm getting a weird.
One second.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to see this yet. I just want to write down.
Would it be better if I just closed the folds?
What are you missing?
Right.
What comes before SS to refile?
Oh, get it out from here. This is it.
Oh, Mark.
Oh, it's up here. It's up weird.
This, where are you writing this? So what are you trying to do?
I
Oh, you're
want-
trying to bring that file down.
Yeah.
Where is
When I
this
do the
one?
splits,
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know where it went.
This.
Oh, it's in the 10, in the 12, yeah.
Not there.
There.
Is it because
I was feeling like I was totally stupid there.
Oh, got it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who was that? Oh.
so what I have to do
You would, depending on if SS reg file uses promises or not, you'll have to use it then, but you would typically read the file, so the callback function that runs in reg file, that's where you probably want to so that it, so once it writes to it, it calls that function.
So I would do function there, comma.
No, it's inside that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Got it.
So if it's not an error, then you can go ahead and say, yeah.
Right,
It'll write it, it'll write it in. Usually you won't do that, because obviously when you write a file, you're not going to want to read it right off the bat. But it's been a while since I looked at the FS documentation. I don't know if it uses promises or not. We'll go over promises a little bit later.
I mean, I understand that. We're just kind of going over the functionality of what it can do. Because I mean, like the thing we did on Saturday with the calculator, like obviously that's not necessary because you could just type in any calculation you want to know. But the fact that it allows us to do something like that,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How about you guys? You guys getting it?
Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm hanging up on directories, but I figured out I had used things not in the same directory, and it needs to be in the same directory.
Gotcha. Yeah, for the sake of simplicity, I would just read and write from the same directory that you're executing it from.
Yeah.
Just, so you understand how it works.
Oh, absolutely.
How about you guys? You doing good?
Let's see. Split.
Debugging? Good. Good. Debugging was fun sometimes. I missed that in the last part.
Awesome.
You know what I did was you had an unsolved folder.
Yeah.
The other one was in the main folder.
Okay.
Not the unsolved folder. So it was
Oh,
trying to read
yeah.
the text file. It couldn't find
You're
it.
gonna find it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you already have
Nice.
Yeah, that's what it is. Do I use this? Like FS or no? No, I don't use FS. For what I currently do. But, I mean, there's people who do. So, like, if you have a service, and then tells me if you try doing
Console.
So like if someone's a guy going to your website and I'm like going to that thing that text and tells you that it's not actually copying so if you're trying to you essentially choose a file from your computer, and basically transfer the in your browser into web page.
It'd be really cool. Typically, if you hovered over it, if you're in the directory and you hover, you could just slide the directory instead of having to do all the directories and find it. Because that gets a little complicated in terms. You gotta keep changing directories. Now, once you find the correct one, and then you're just going backward and forward.
Right.
Which isn't quite as bad.
Yeah.
But like I said, there's a lot of different ways that you can install. Some people just get a database. Yeah, but I mean, it's sort of the same directory. It just really depends on the type of file.
JSON file, that's what it's created. It's working.
You obviously don't want to say that what it really need to download that. How's it coming? Let's see. No, I'll do my best.
Yes.
Make that data an array. Since you're looking through it, I don't understand how 60 file array.
So the data itself is not an array. Data is a string, and I converted into an array using the split function.
Data.split, right?
Right. So a string can be broken down. So that's what I'm doing. When you use the split function, if you look in the documentation, oops.
I didn't know that it like converts it into an array.
Yeah. So let's say split. You see this array of substrings. So whenever you use this method called split, the return type is always an array. Right. So it will divide based on, you're saying comma, so it will divide your string on that. So that's my scenario.
How did it know where to split it like it didn't split hot and shower?
Yeah, so, it knew this because of this thing over
Oh,
here.
I see.
In the argument, I'm saying split it on copy. You can put space and see what happens. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
And apparently the main function is very similar to scope listen.
Okay.
Where you can call something above when you say above your first one.
Okay. Okay. And how do you call the one above?
Very similar. Not that much like that's things that
Yeah.
in order to design
For me,
above, it's essentially you can call one simple.
You can. Anything for the word.
So say if you have, if you're trying to read a file that's in a folder, let's read the bullet. You cannot talk, you can't read it. But you can go above.
So I have this folder, and I have my txt file inside it, and my JavaScript file is also inside over here. So this will work, right?
That would work.
Okay. Okay. And then what will not work?
If the JavaScript file is outside of that folder. So outside of it.
I don't know.
Not for this example, yes.
I'm not really sure. You can
Okay.
if you want.
So you can use // to go up and use it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you go above it. So
Yeah, from over here, I go to this folder and then read my txt file. That's not possible?
Firebase was just one of the requirements.
Like if you do // this, go up and then.
But it would be technically it is technically, but it's also part of the requirement. Right. I just want to make sure.
So if my JS is outside, right, and I'm trying to read this text file, right, I need to give the location of this text file. So if I say // and then the .txt, shouldn't it go up the folder and then find it? You give it a try and see if it works.
it works if not that it's not that it works if
Did I work? Good? Okay. All right. Any questions on this exercise? All right. Let's take a 15 break right now, and then we have some more little extended exercise. All right. We'll start back at 7:45, 7:50.
No.
Let's do.
Better? Getting it?
Yeah, I got it to work.
Oh, that's
Don't
awesome.
ask me to do it on my own.
Okay. I think, well, you already got it working, then I wrote the code, right? You already had it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but basically, I'll copy the
Yeah.
code from the read.
More important is that you know that there's a function called read file and how to get the file.
I was just thinking about you.
I get it. It's just like the stuff that comes after. Basically.
Right. And it's considered a standard. I don't care if you're a jazz guitarist or a folk guitarist, like that, yeah. You know, and I remember they did an album together. And he was, I saw them interviewed, he was like, just so impressive. Just that his craftsmanship and incredible.
So no matter how many
They go back and forth.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when I started playing, we're kind of like a little lower, basically.
I think
Obviously, like,
It's crazy talented. It's like, I don't know if I told you, but that's what he sees.
that one, it already had the info.
There's no hard feelings, there's no attitudes, nothing. Well, you know, just kind of like, I mean, usually a lot of things. I'm trying to be the one that has, the song. American Girls, but but like you did. Yeah. He's a genius.
Where it found a power.
And basically shows this right here doesn't work. It's like this big. Yeah.
Leading up to this makes more sense. So we can actually see it.
Yeah, this is
the same thing. Yeah, he has a very important style and way of singing, but
So is it
when I sing
always a kid? You did everything.
I don't post much. I don't post much.
Or request is by definition a get. So
They're forgetting Joe Cocker.
So there'd be another command to simulate post.
Yeah, this could be anything there.
Watch the allows us to take what I was doing and play it down.
He was playing Blackheart.
We're using a lot of
That's it, yeah, I was like, but I'm ready.
Oh, he's good too. He's very good.
Turn to me. This just
Very good. But you look at some of that stuff and you go,
yeah, it does. I'm gonna download all those songs. I guess they don't have
Yeah, it's on.
GitLab, right? Yes.
So, but this is HTML by itself. Easy to pull down.
Remainder of zero. Whatever map it might be. Using something, all of these working together. So to download it,
Keeps asking for passwords. Repeatedly. Yeah, that's what my friend does. Why?
So it was in data.
Are you doing some source
Took it out of the text file.
Git.
Threw it in data.
I do it from Git.
We did that. This was the second part. You read this file, you watch these characters. If there's an error, it doesn't mean it's
So I have my
there was no error.
Source
Here, we know it's that bad because we just print out those.
So I had to go and get the source tree doesn't align with the database, so like
That's where it got.
if you ask for it, it provides you expect to get. If it does that, then I think about what you keep getting errors out. So I have to like force it with get that.
I'll put in the word for you guys. And split it where the commas were. So we took data and we said splits. And so we'll split where? We'll split anytime you see a comma. So we already have a comma there. She's like, do you pressure right here? No, all in. Yeah, just like a comma there.
Well, you always had it. You have the easy way.
I'm still, everything's still downloaded. And if I just pull usually just means is you can make it anything. It's just you can make it like
I don't work for software.
yeah. Essentially it's just needs and values. So a lot of times what it's going to tell you if it doesn't work is in this case two arguments. The first one it's going to bring back is going to be an error. So we're just going to call it that because it's totally what it is. Really, yeah, it could be like
open source. I pull it from source tree.
we would find that right here
And I
was
copy
that
that we
docs.
explaining it. That's what I want. I don't know where your answer is.
No, some people just kind of know that you're going to assume that it's going to be that. I go down to the side and then tables. I try to
So it's like writes these guys, and then if it doesn't.
Right, maybe. I recommend if you because they have things, but you have.
Oh, right, yeah, they have to solve.
And if it is just one, I was just going to use an error. Like I said, it's a super like gimmick thing. Like it's
Just like if you can't like go through these, it's
I like when I see the ERR, I get the error. I love it. James did because I just I might be dumb later and I might want to tell you like, what are you? Are you an error? There's an error. You're probably an error. But I don't know. I've just always been. Yeah, you see that a lot.
You see that in C# everywhere. C# Python, a lot of it's just
People use that E for events as well. Like that's where I started like really getting not confused. Like if you built it, you know what it is. But if somebody else comes in, you have like something with an E that's related to event here, that here maybe an error. We should go. Your company's going to tell you how they want it, and they're not going to let you choose. Have some linting rules around it so you can't mess it up. Capital.
kind of on the border. I think even worse off if you were Reginald. I think Reginald.
I feel like I'll see. I'll start some of this.
I'm sure it does.
No one knows about it.
You said it was. No, I haven't heard you yet.
Essentially,
What you did. Did it say in the rules specifically?
Yes.
We introduced
Yep.
Why not just code a timer every time?
Code a timer? Yeah, you guys should do a project and give it to me and I'll run your timer. Google has already done it. I don't know. Yeah.
Lazy programmers.
Yep. Exactly. Why? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Now I was just remembering last Saturday. Well, you guys were in the class. I didn't have a class, so I went mountain biking for the first time in over here. I did it back in Arkansas. It was like a total scenery change. We had like greenery over there. Over here, you can't even fall from the bike. I had a guy. We had a guy who was. Yeah, we had a guy in our group who did it for the first time. He fell 3 times, and the last time he fell on the cactus, he had like. It was pretty bad. Mountain biking. Yeah, we did it in Brown's Ranch in Scottsdale. That was painful. Just looking at him, we were like,
I love mountain biking. I stopped mountain biking so I can do homework for this class. I've flipped a few cactus.
Yeah, it was kind of scary. Yeah. And then I was like taking a rest, standing, and there was some other bike there. Oh, don't stand over there. Ants are there. Oh, don't stand over there. This is. I mean, what do I do? Where do I stand? Yeah, just bike. Like, yeah, you know what? Don't do anything. Yeah. Yeah. It was a crazy experience. Yeah. Keep pedaling.
I was halfway down the mountain one time, and I hit a patch of sand, and it was through a curvy section where there's cholla. And I clipped in a cholla with my shoulder. And I had to ride all the way back to the truck because I couldn't get it out.
Without getting attacked with tears.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and it was stuck to my camelback. So I couldn't get my camelback to get my pliers out. I had to go all the way back to the truck.
That is crazy.
My friend, we were chopping cholla one time with like machete or something. And my friend got some stuck in his gut.
Oh man.
We were trying to get it out, but then it would get stuck to our hand. And then it would get stuck to the other hand. Eventually got stuck to our pants. We eventually got to the point where it was on the pants, but we just like that. And it came off the skin because it's still attached to the pants. But then it just falls on.
It's crazy. All right, so before we begin the next one, I just want to show you the documentation. If you Node has a good documentation. It's just like, I won't say it's difficult to read, but for beginners it might be confusing. So so what I did was I just googled Node.js fs, which is file system. I found the method. So when you see there's a square bracket, this means this argument is optional. Okay, so what it is saying is, okay, you have to pass in file, and then it describes what it is. The second one is optional, and the third one it says is a callback function. So that's how the documented. Yeah.
Well, how is the second one optional? Because if you don't have the second one, wouldn't the third one be the second one?
Right. Not the data is not optional. Sorry, the third one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the third one is optional. This one. It kind of looks weird because they have separated out with a square bracket. But that basically means that this whole thing is optional. And what goes inside is these flags. We were looking at the encoding one in the read one, but you can put our encoding in this one also. They have a mode. They have a flag. So this is how the documentation is. So if you want to see how these are, then you have a read file option over here. Then it tells you if you don't pass in the encoding, it puts a null over there, and then you will see a garbage, or it will look like garbage to you when you read that file. So this is the documentation. You know, I would highly recommend looking at the official documentation, especially for Node.js. Because this will get you in a habit to try to understand and how to read the official documentations. Might be a little bit difficult in the beginning. If you're not sure, I would just Google how to read a file in Node.js. Some good examples. That's how you can Google and find out how to do something in Node.js also. Alright, I just wanted to show you this before we go on to the next one. So next one we saw write, read, and the third one is append file. Alright, so we saw what write was doing. Write was basically write it to the file, but it kind of overwrites it, you know, when you call it multiple times. So for that solution, for that problem, the solution is to use append file instead of write file, if that's your use case. So I'm just going to go in this. This was then it's called append file. This is okay. Always one. Oh, this one. Okay, this is the best one. Okay. So you see, if I keep running it, it kind of appends that data. Keep appending it to the next one. It's not overriding it. So if I call the third time, more and more and more. Okay, that's what append file. It doesn't override it. It goes ahead, and it's the same as write file. Doesn't exist. It will create it, put the data inside it, and the next time you call append file, it's going to append the whatever you're passing in at the end of the file. Yes.
So So when would you want to use write file instead of pen file and it's safer?
So remember in Firebase also we were seeing that we want to capture every kind of record. This is the same case. If you want to not override it and you want to capture each one, and we'll see in the next example. Most of the time, well, I wouldn't say most of the time, but I would be using a pen file because write file kind of overrides everything. I don't want to do that.
Right.
But write file would be something maybe at the initial that it's like constant file, it's never going to change. Then you don't have to worry about appending it. You just call write file the first time and be done with it.
If you use a pen file and the file doesn't exist, will it create it?
Yeah, it will create it. Works similar like write file. It just like appends the data at the end of the file. Yeah. So you can easily replace write file with append file. Okay. So write file, read file, and append file. Any questions on this one? Okay. So in the next exercise, you're going to use all three of them. And let me show you how it's working. Okay, there's something here. Okay. CD 15. All right, so in this one, node bank.js. So this is this exercise kind of simulates working of a bank. So what operations you can do a bank is I want to see how much money I have in my account. I want to deposit some amount of money, and then I want to withdraw some amount of money. So what I would do is I would say bank.js total. So the important thing over here is node bank.js is a JavaScript file. The word total is something that I'm putting in my code. It's not part of Node.js, it's not part of anything. What I'm doing is I am passing an argument called total, and in my code I'm checking, hey, if I get a word called total, then what I have to do is I have to display the amount of money in my bank account. Okay? This is all customized. This is not part of Node.js. So let's say the second one I say deposit, and I say, so then I get a message called deposited $5. Okay? Now if I go back and do total, it will say this is what I have. Again, node space bank.js, those are fixed. Everything after that is customized. This is in my code. In my code, I'm checking if I get the keyword deposit, then there should be followed by a number, and I'm going to add that to my bank account. Okay. Now if I call deposit again, let's say 10, deposited 10. Let me go back to my total. It should say 15 because now I have deposited 2, let's suppose, checks. One was for 5, one was for 10. Now my total goes up to $15. Okay. Now similarly, I can do a withdrawal. I can say withdraw set 3. Okay. Now my total is going to be $12. Okay. So this is how your exercise is going to perform. Total, deposit, withdraw, these are the keywords that I'm using in my code. You can totally replace it with a D, T, W, or whatever keyword you like. The only thing is when you write your if condition, if statements, you want to make sure that these are matching with whatever you have. Okay? And this is using all three, read, write, well, probably not write, because I'm appending it. Read and append. And then you are going to write this to a file. So this is how your file is going to look like. Take a moment, do this as a group activity. Work with your neighbor on this. This is how the file I have is divided into. If you guys come up with a better solution or you want to do something different, you can try. But this is what I'm writing to my file. So take a few minutes, try to understand how you're going to write this file. So I started with deposit of 5, then 10, then I withdrew -3. Well, I withdrew 3, right? And I'm kind of putting it as -3. Okay. Let us look at the what does the README say? Okay, start from scratch. Total. This should tally up all of the money in the bank balance and display to the user. Deposit. It's kind of the documentation that we saw. So it has angular brackets number. This means that it's a data type of number that you're going to pass in. Withdraw number. This should add a negative amount to the bank balance. And then LOTO. This should subtract an amount from the bank balance. I think this is like the bonus part. Let me see. No. They should subtract an amount from the bank balance, but if a random number is hit, it should add back a larger amount to the bank balance. So in my example, I think I'm using 25 cents. Let's see. Oh. Let's see how much did I win. So I won a lottery of $1.75. So, huh? Yeah. So, so what's happening behind the scene is that I have a fixed number in my code, kind of like hard coded. Let's suppose 3, and then every time I run this command, LOTO, it generates a random number between 1 and 10, right? And if this random number that comes out matches 3, then I say I have 1. If it doesn't, then it says I have not won. So let me try again. Okay. So the next time if I lose, what I'm doing is I'm subtracting a certain amount. In my code, I'm subtracting 25 cents, so 0.25. And then if these two match, I won the lottery. I'm adding I think 175 to my bank balance. These are different numbers. You can put whatever you want. You can put $1 if they lose and $5 if they win. It's up to you guys. And this number also you can pick any number, 0 to 100, 1 to 100, 1 to 1000, doesn't matter. Just to keep it simple, I have 1 to 10, and if any one of these matches, then I say, add this number, otherwise take that money out. Okay. So start with the first total deposit withdraw for first 3, and see how far you can get. And then, if there's any confusion, we'll come back to the lottery one. This activity is 30 minutes. Oh yeah, this is supposed to be, please work with your neighbors. It's kind of a little more complicated. I want everybody to understand the problem. If you already know it, work with somebody who's kind of having difficulty. Yeah. Thank you, Roy. Good point. So just to give you hints, of course, the process.rb is going to use this. Append file function. Read file. What else do I have? Oh yeah. Math.random for this part. Okay. Let's see. The split function that we used earlier, this would be used when you are reading the file.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically,
It's like
if else statements. Anybody here use a switch statement? Switch. Okay. Oh, you did it? Okay. If else and switch. Or switch. So one of these you can use.
Total. So you can use the file and pass in the directory.
I would strongly recommend breaking the functionality down into functions. You know, we want to write good code, looks good, works good, more efficient, refactored code. So try to break these into each individual function and call that function instead of writing the whole code in your if else or switch statements. Alright. So an example would be I have a function called deposit, and then I call that function in my if else or switch statement. Okay? Yeah. Cleaner, nicer code. Alright, so 15 to 20 minutes in, I'll start writing some code too, so you guys can take a look at that.
So now we have to getting the response from the graph and doing the split on the row. That's how I sort it out. Record is I'm using a for each, so what it's going to do is once this is split, I'm going to count those ready of these things. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of those individual records in that thing. And I'm just saying for each record, which you can call it, it's just a meaning of for each record, do this.
Which in this case is going to solve directly access that yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, there it is.
The data part in the append file and the read file, so mostly just the append file. The second parameter, does that happen in the variable?
It's the same thing as
So what I do, when I have
It's kind of
but
this
it's
is
really
right.
and
This
it's
is right.
first one, so I have to
Pretty
finish
short.
the second one. So
It's
really
function. We put some large function. It wouldn't be available.
and you so you just
But
specify
first thing, it's
It's usually like
So these are the 4 commands that we are coding for.
yeah. What do you got?
Let me know that. I was just making sure if it's something like file. So he's added this.
You're
on the right track. What part are you working on?
I am just taking stuff from the calculator
Keep going until you feel stuck. The math part of it's the weird part. So that makes it really hard. Most important is knowing your coding. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So maybe
There's a rock here.
Yeah,
Wherever you're throwing
whatever you say you use your.
No, I didn't.
I didn't hear that.
No, I don't think. I think since I looked at my LinkedIn and realized that I don't have Java on there, probably.
They're looking for Java.
Yeah, because they're all Java based, so that's alright.
It's just a normal site.
But we'll see. I still have like at least once a week I have a recruiter ping me all the time. So I mean, I'm in no rush to find another job. I mean, I already have one, so I'm just waiting to see, like, depending on the company, I guess.
Right.
I think it would be kind of fun to work for a startup, but at the same time, I'm just like, well, you know, everybody that's already established has the benefits, and, and all that stuff. So, but it would be a fun environment to work in.
Oh, definitely. It has both advantages and disadvantages. But you have to put in a lot more time with a startup.
Yeah.
Established one, it kind of gets boring sometimes. You know, like, what do I do? Kind of stability is there, but then you want to enjoy the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm still trying to find time to get into iOS development, just because like I told some of the recruiters and some of the interviews that I had in the past, they're like, oh, so you're learning Swift? I was like, well, yeah, I started too. So like, how far along are you? I was like, well, honestly, I just maybe threw in like an hour's worth of studying already. So, but everybody's been interested to see if I know like mobile development, just because it seems like people, want some apps to build. So.
Does your company create something for like education?
I don't know. I haven't been there a long time, so I haven't. I've only been there since April. So, like my 401k doesn't kick in until I've been there for a year.
Oh yeah.
So, and I'm assuming it's probably the same thing for like investing in education and stuff like that. But I don't know. I'll have to check and see.
So there's those nano-degree programs from Google. So there's the iOS one.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's like $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
But we were, our manager was like, hey, you get like $5,000 per year for education.
Right.
So we're trying to see if we can use this. I was like, well, I'll just take this course.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Degree, right? And
Actually,
iOS programs.
There's a class on Udemy that I was going to take. Actually, just got it today. It's because the one that I bought before was for iOS 11.
Okay.
And this one's for iOS 12.
Oh.
And they have it on sale. Like if you want to pick it up, it's only $12.
Okay.
It's normally $200.
Wow. Okay.
So and it's a pretty large course. It comes with this one here, and she's really good. Oh yeah. And there's just tons and tons. This is like a whole boot camp course for iOS. There's
500 chapters?
Yeah, there's 500 lessons for $12.
Wow.
So, and this is like the start to finish, like boot camp course for iOS development.
Wow.
So check it out. It's $12. I mean, so I grabbed it quick. So because they only have the sale for 2 more days.
Okay.
So, but yeah, check it out.
I'll check it out.
It's a good start rather than spending 2
Oh yeah, of course. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. One of our final projects, but I tried to open it last week. The person didn't have a full year. It was already saying hey, nobody else was going to buy this domain. So what's going on is we're going to is this an asynchronous call?
Yes.
That's why. But say
Yep. By default, all those file system methods, unless you explicitly call the synchronous function, they all run asynchronous.
So I've been seeing 5.
Okay.
So it depends on.
So it was how was
They think it's going
we call it
so like you may want like
okay in return to talk about it and
they try and get you to buy so if you ever like try to create a game like I think like one element of what you gave them and then like assembled hats for like something. They're so just random names. We're not going to be
Joy.
It will be part of directions if these are all happening points there. So the instructors are going to have some pretty elaborate heroic details. We're going to have some heroic details that will help certain things. Let's say you're ahead of the game. And your rope is a beast. And a lot of times it doesn't build right. So you'll notice, get out of here.
Yeah, so you're
Whatever which your the code
Somebody made a pretty smooth script. Put that in there, and that is awesome. I wish I would have known that like zero. Just not enough time to figure that out. This, reveal those. Yeah, so say in your local file, you work, you've got some variables you have to use and set up that you don't want to publish in the world out, but you are critical to a work. I just use
so these are
still don't do example gets good. So you don't want the world to know about it, but it doesn't do this, you that big road. You don't want to increase it, but that's right.
So total just prints out like your total.
Yeah, you get it right.
Oh, I don't make sure it's like some is errors. We're going to be at least
Right.
I saw a window.
I've had a hard time.
It's very complicated. It's very complicated.
Oh, for sure. It's easy because, like, even the most complicated ones, like, on the other side, they're like, oh, broken, you know, they're, to them, they're just head. But it's not like, there's not a big there's going to be a week where we learn to express. Learn how to express. So that's something you need to be able to optimizations.
Yeah, so again, just
There's going to be a whole lot of stuff around it.
yeah, so understand
But if someone isn't trying to put that in their app, you say project 2, if you want to have user authentication, that would be really and you'll have all the tools then to create one. And using this express, you can say one using are you going to integrate? You don't have a whole database dedicated. You're just going to tie into yeah, Facebook has this, Twitter has it, Instagram has it. Everybody in their world Instagram has it. So instead of
yeah, the second argument is when you
We have to do the same thing again.
no, it would be too. You would just be appending whatever it is that you
essentially that's what we're going to get out of
say
some
no,
story.
say that you yes.
They're definitely taking some of that heavy duty out there.
So it would be your
I would use everything out of that right there. AWS,
adding
it's tough. I have I've had multiple movies this spring and summer where they will
Right,
be
because
saying,
you're not-
like, we're switching everything to this. A lot of people are. Like, it sucks, so we need to be good at this.
Input right there.
I don't know.
Input is
Yeah, it's just
only
big
going to
thing.
be value that you have
It's taking all the world, man.
console.
One business at a time.
Yeah, any object has used and they're all challenging and they change a lot. Like I built a whole app around using Twitter off. And right now I'm getting this warning in some of these where it's like, hey, the way you're doing this is gonna be sunset and stuff.
No, I would
So update it or just broken one day. Just take it away.
it's the same thing where you can everyone else yeah.
It sucks. This is why things break. And a lot of the free projects that are out there, you know, those people are passionate early. They're probably new dev, let's make this awesome thing. And, oh, I need to do this to get a job. Yes. Make a good job, realize they have no time. It's just something that needs to be changed. Now that awesome free things, programs, and so, but it was on GitHub, and it's public. You can go in there,
Well, what split does is say you have a screen, maybe split values.
oh, totally.
Split does, you know, basically take each value.
Yeah, announces
Now you can iterate. Now, when you look at that, data right, yeah. So your array of strings would now be full of data.
Work your way around it.
So now you can iterate word data
I
AR.
gotta go, yeah. So like,
I parse is each value. I don't know if I understand the basic together and we can learn. Yeah, so split doesn't do anything fancy except take whatever values whatever
That thing just like stayed outside. Yeah, that's about it. That's about very much. Yeah.
This case, obviously you want to iterate that a person value.
This community of Stack Overflow where you can see some of the answers kind of have some snark and something it's going to do, but not a lot. Usually it's pretty supportive.
What is
The most biggest thing you see is like, you can't just ask a question like this. You want to show us your code. Like, give me your repo.
Yeah,
every single time.
Yeah. So there's one seems like
Remember the structure
That's me.
If you can walk through it and tell yourself how that's what it's doing,
That
you think it's doing.
That was me with 14.
Just like
So, when you're in there,
I've been doing only on I've been doing one.
so times equals plus equals.
Very good stuff.
Yeah, and so I've been redesigning
right before your
It just takes an amount
my
and
current
multiplies it by what it's
I followed you, and I have an error code from this at the bottom. I don't know what's wrong with my brackets. It says that it's connected to function tool.
Oh,
Function total. And then you have this also.
it needs to be the yeah.
thought I had it.
But when I was trying to amend it, it just kept adding zeros and
Yeah.
Function
But it's
total.
zeros.
This is good. Then here does this.
Right. What I was doing was did all this, I started copying all this.
Ah, this one.
Yeah.
This should end over there.
I just had what they would do.
Are you gonna go over like how the app works and what to put in and get to work and everything?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well,
I can just wait it.
no. So I will say. So now I coded the total one only, right?
Yeah.
Right now. So how do I test it? I say node my JS file, and the command that I have coded is total, and that's it. And it should give me the total amount. I'm going to, yeah. Then I'm going to do the deposit next.
Okay. Everything's broken. Put it up here.
Node total.
Oh, down here.
Does the file exist? Okay. Okay. Open your bank.txt. Yeah, that should work. Okay. Resolve file name. How did you, what did you type in? Node bank.js space total. Resolve file name. Do ls do a ls here. Yeah, you're somewhere else. So you need to go back and just
Oh, into the unsolved folder.
so you are
Give us liberty out, but not
There we go.
okay. Required is not required. That's better. So that's a different. Let's go back. It's required. It's not required.
Yeah, and it's just a short way. It's probably the you could get more
So, okay, it's not able to calculate. Go down, probably calculate.
Did I mess up the parsent?
This is red. Show me your bank.txt.
I did a lot of my.
Yeah, so since we're using integer, we can't have dots in it. If you want the dots, you have to use the parse float. So either
So I can just delete these.
yeah,
I think.
I kept it simple.
Yeah, I think I pulled these off of the what was slacked out.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sure it works if I do it again, right?
Yeah, you can just use arrows.
Cool. Okay, thank you for going through that with me.
So the file contains decimal points. For simplicity, I changed it to integer. But if you guys are following it, you just need to use parse float instead of parse int. If your file has decimal points inside.
It's okay, guys. Stay in.
Yeah. So race, I have to quickly write the whole thing out now. Okay, deposit.
There is no way. I've reached the end of the rainbow.
Just,
So, should we So there's two things we can do. We can either come in and specify what these are going to be.
It's actually a function in SQL. It's called stuff.
How much you want
This calculator stuff to me is always, even if I see some this part's so your approach to testing this some results sometimes. We'll do it. Exactly. So, I need more loops. So I
the debug Alright, so here, when you create, go ahead and just let hit. Okay, so
any questions on the deposit function?
So I just say arc, so use the first parameter.
So in the deposit, I'm just appending my new amount to the file. So I'm using append file function, and this value is coming from the command line. The second argument here, deposit is the first command, and the second is the amount that I'm trying to deposit. Right, and I have this value declared on the top. Okay. And this is all one argument. What I'm doing is I'm adding a comma and then adding a value so that it shows up comma 5. So let's suppose I add a new one, deposit 7. So it will say comma space 7.
video can be just like
Yeah, it's always that's your lifeline. That's how
Okay, let's. I'm going to do the withdraw.
I'm curious. I think that would be good.
When you console log your deposit function, when I do my deposit function, it doesn't add the numbers from the previous number. So I'm wondering what his definition of value is.
It's probably a variable that's declared before the for loop.
Right, it's a global variable, but like I don't know what. I would assume it'd be the balance plus the number that you have. But
Well, there is no balance. So whenever you read the font, you'll read the content, and then using this return function, it'll split every value after a comma. So you have basically the array of strings, and you iterate over that and add each value together, and then bring it back together.
in this is a positive.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about deposit or total? Oh, deposit. Oh,
It would just be the value that he input. You're not adding anything.
Right.
Oh, that's true. It's just showing. Okay,
Right.
so
Yeah, so it's not like you're running totals.
Right.
right.
It's just the last 5.
Sorry, I don't know why.
That's okay.
We're like, wait, what?
It's supposed to read over all the deposit. Right. It's giving me an error saying that it's not functioning.
Alright, so withdraw, I'm doing the same thing, appending with a negative sign. Okay? That's all I'm doing. So it appends it in the as a negative number, and then when I call my total, it's going through each number and adding them. So when it encounters a negative number, it's going to subtract it. So you see, I don't have to update my total function at all. I just will do the same thing and add it with a negative sign.
It's because
Okay, so how can you get the total?
it's still saying full error or not function.
Really?
Check. But that's just a display.
What do you have returned in mind?
Okay, any questions on the 4, well, 1, 2, 3, 3 commands? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. I'm going to leave the lottery one, and we'll post a solution. You guys take a look at the lottery one, but it uses mat.random to generate a random number, and then you can hard code any number. It just matches it with that number and sees if it is. If it matches, then you basically what you're doing is you are doing the same functionality that you're doing in deposit. You are adding it, right? It's kind of deposit if you win, and if you lose, you are basically what you're doing. You are withdrawing that amount of money from the bank account. That's what the lottery method is doing. So take a look at that one, and then if there's any other questions on these three ones. Okay. Yeah, I'll post it after this class. Yeah. I can show you what the solution over here is. This is for the lottery one. Okay. So this is what I was saying. It's grabbing a number, and this chance, it will get a random number. And over here, the hard-coded value is 1. So every time if the random number that is generated is equal to 1, this means you have won. If it is not, then it means you have lost. So if you win, it's adding $2 positive. If you lose, it's adding 25. It's taking out 25 cents.
If you click on total on line 15,
right here. So 25. Oh, looks like the 25 cents is going to go away anyway. So it's probably the cost, and if you win, you're getting back $2.
In reality, it should be code that 2 is a random number. Which will know the value that's input.
This is not an input. So there's no input to the loader function. What it is doing, it's behind the scene. It generates a random number between 1 and 2. And this thing you have said that it's equal to 1. Then you are saying yes, percentage 1. And the amount is fixed. If you bet, you get $2. You can make it variable.
make it a random number.
Make it a random number.
Maybe a capacity.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Make it a random number.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So, let's see. All right. So, this is going to be the last topic of the day. This the one that I'm going to tell now. And of course, since it is the last topic, it's going to be more complicated. So let's go ahead. Okay, so we saw Node.js using reading files, writing files. When we were doing JavaScript, we saw AJAX calls, right? It was calling an APIs. You did your project, you were calling your APIs. So Node.js also has that functionality where you can make API calls. Okay, in JavaScript, we were using AJAX. Node.js has a similar functionality, and that's what we are going to look at right now. And this is called request. In Node.js, it's called request. Now, when we were doing the file system, reading and writing files, we saw we needed to import a module which was called FS, right? Now, to make HTTP calls, we are going to import a module called request. Okay? So, let's go ahead and let's take a look at the code. So, since we are going to import, so we'll have a require request. Okay. This. Okay, not this one. Request. Okay. So So let me do this. So I'm going to create a new file. I'll say RQ. Okay. So request, I said, is also a package. So we need to do a require. So we'll say var request is equal to require request. Right, same as file system, we were doing require fs, we are going to do request over here. All right, now how does this request work is, how do you make calls from it? Let's see. Request node.js. Okay, so I just googled request node.js, and they have in the readme file they have some examples, and this is how the request is going to work. So let's take a look. What they are saying is you declare a variable request, require is equal to request, and we already did that, right? And the next one is you call a method called request. Okay, now if you call a method request, how do you know if it's a get call or a post? You know, we have like many HTTP methods, get, pull, post. How do we know which is this one? So what happens is, by default, this is how it's coded, this is how the syntax is. If you call the method request after using the require, it's always going to make a get call. Okay, so you don't have to worry about if it's which HTTP call. You don't have to specify get. It's always going to call it, it's always going to do a get. All right, now there's a different way to write it, but we can see, you guys can look into it. They have example over here. If you scroll down, yeah, something like this. You can also write the method out, where you can, you know, Ajax, we saw, we were saying Ajax method get, and then you are passing in the URL. This is another this is another way if you want to write it out. But we'll, since we are only going to look at the get call, so this is a simpler way, and it's always going to, and most of the time you guys are going to be using get call for now, since you're calling some APIs. So I would say just stick to the simpler one, so that it gets it's not as confusing. Okay, again, request, as the package request, this will give me this function, and in this function the first argument is the URL. Okay, and the second argument is a callback function similar to the read file. Okay, and we saw that in read file, in write file we had error, and then in read file we had data, right? So it's similar over here. We have error, then we have something called response, and then finally body. We'll take a look, we'll do console.log and see what each of them comes out as, but this is how the request function works. So the first is the URL, and I'll find some URL to put in over here. But it's going to be the URL, your HTTP and some value. The second is a callback function, which takes 3 arguments: error as read file and write file. If there's any error, it's going to come over here. Response and body, will do a console.log and see what each of these is. But to tell you, the body will contain the data. All right. So let me see. I have a URL over here. Let's see if this one works. Okay, let's see what the response comes back. But this is again any URL. So in the next activity, we'll see we are going to call our favorite API OMDB to get some movie data back, and it's going to work similarly. Okay, so let me format this. Okay, and then let's go ahead and console.log each one of them and see what happens. Console.log error. We are putting if conditions previously. You can do the same thing, but I'm just going to console.log. If it works, you won't see anything over here. Console.log will output response. Okay, and then console.log body. And let's go, this is inside 16. Okay. Thank you. Okay. To do node. Yes. Cannot find module request.
Supposed to be request or if you go to your code? Require or request for line 4?
Oh, well, the documentation over here says require. Var request is equal to required request. Well, it's in single quote, but it shouldn't matter. It's JavaScript, so I could use single or double, right? Any idea? Huh? What was it? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So single double. Okay. Yep. Yep.
I'm getting the same error.
Yeah. So so the problem over here is some of the modules are not part of Node.js. File system was, but there are some that is written outside Node.js. It's kind of not included in it, and looks like request is one of them. So if you look at this documentation, the first line they say is I have to do a npm install request. So you guys did a node installation, right? You did a npm install node. So this is similar. You have to install this package to use it, and you guys are going to run into this issue a lot as you are doing some more activities. You are trying to use some module that somebody has already written, and they do some good functionality that you want to use in your program, and that's how you do it. And don't worry about the npm part. We'll look into it in the next class. But what npm basically does is it's kind of you're telling your npm software that go ahead and install this module on my computer. Okay, npm stands for Node Package Manager. Okay, it's part of Node. So you are telling Node that, hey, go ahead and find this module called request and install that. Okay, so npm is kind of a repository, a repo. It has a collection of all a different kind of modules. So if you say npm install request, it already knows where to go and look at it. Okay, it's actually looking into website npm. It has all the packages over here. Yes.
Doesn't matter what level install that, if you install for just this file, like just this project, or if you do it globally?
So it can be globally and it can also be locally. There are two different options, but if you leave it like this, it's going to install globally so that it is available. Yes. Yep. We'll look into that more in the next class, but it will install so that it's kind of available to you everywhere. Yes.
Does it pass over environment controls where you can build up an environment so you can install things specifically?
Environment. Say that again.
So like I've seen this in Python where you would build an environment, then you would run your install for requests and all the other packages you need within that environment.
Mm-hmm.
That way, you know you can get out of that environment, go into a new environment, install different items, different versions of it, and not have them affect your code by any means. It's all within that environment.
Right, and that's what Will was saying. There's a concept of local and global. Right. So if I don't give anything, if I just do this, it's kind of installed globally, so it's available anywhere I write my code. But there's an option to do it locally. Then it will only stick to your, over here the environment is your project. It doesn't go out of your project. That's the environment.
Okay.
Is that one?
We'll go over that.
Yeah, we'll go over that. Yep. So let's go ahead and install this and okay. Okay, looks like it is installed. Let's see, request. From this. Okay. Okay, so go ahead and I did an npm install request.
No matter what directory is
No, it doesn't matter. Yes. What was that? Yes. If you have already not done previously, I'm just showing it to you again. I've already done this. So it installed everything. Now, what I'm going to do is, once this is complete, I'm going to run my file again, node rq.js, and then I should see some output. So, yep, so that's why it's giving you all this stuff. Worked? Okay. Yeah. Let me do one by one. Let's see, where does the body come back? Okay. Okay, so what you are seeing is you are seeing a whole HTML code and everything when you run this, and I'll move on to the next one where the movies one we can actually call an API, but over here the important point over here is this is how you make a get call. So this is equivalent of the AJAX call that we did in JavaScript. All right. So when you call an API, we were doing AJAX, get, and then a URL. So over here, you're going to do the exact same thing. Instead, you're going to use request, and that's part of the Node.js. Okay. Let me do the OMDB one so that we can actually see some proper data. Okay, let's see, what is the URL for so I'm going to go back and find a URL that we used in our old API. And it should be this. Okay. So it's the same URL that we use in our AJAX calls. I just copied the same thing, movie name, and then I'm using the API key trilogy. You can use the same one in your example, and then let's go ahead and parse. Let's see what this comes back with. Okay. So I'm getting all this JSON back, and this is the first one is the response. So maybe let me comment these out so that we can look at each of them. Okay. So the first part is called the response. So what happens is when you call any API, it gives you a response back, and we saw in the console on the network tab of your Google Chrome, it had a response tab over there. So what it does is it tells you what happened, was it successful or not. It has a lot of those information, header information and all that kind of stuff. The more important part from the response we are looking for is the code. It's called code, and if it returns you the code 200, this means it is successful. Okay, and these codes are defined as a standard. If you Google HTTP codes 200, so see all these codes are, this is like a white paper, this is like the standard that everybody has to follow. So whenever we start working on our APIs, when you are creating your APIs, make sure you follow these code, because these are kind of standard ones. So 200 always means that it is successful. So what we are doing whenever we are calling an API, we are going to check for this code so that we know that the call was successful and they returned us data, right? The another popular one is 400. So in the series of 400, you guys must have seen 404, right? 404 means not found. So suppose you try to call an API with some movie name, or something happens, it's not in the database, usually you'll get a 404 saying, hey, I couldn't find this. All right. So these are all defined, and these are kind of standard. But there's nothing stopping you for using switch out 200 for 400 for just fun. Nothing is stopping you. When you create your API, I could put 200 when there's nothing and put a 404 when there is something. But please don't do that. Yeah. I don't know why I even told you this.
There's nothing stopping you but your
Yep. It's just one of those things that you just have to follow. There's no check and balance. All right. So we saw the response, and we are console.logging the body. So so what we would do is, if there's no error, okay, so not error, and my response I think it should have a code over here, status code or something. It should be make socket, keep alive, request, get. It's repeating. Okay, where's the code 200 over here? Port set host pool method should be on this level. Okay, I can find it. I'm just going to take is it code? Let's see. What was it?
It told you right there, IntelliSense put status code.
Oh, it's status code. Okay, so it's not code, it's status code. Okay. Oh, okay, there you go. 200. Thank you. So it's called status code. So I'm going to check for this. So 200 means that everything was good, it was successful. So I'm going to say if response.status code is equal to 200, All right, so this means there's no error, everything is good, and I want to go ahead and do something. All right, so the other thing over here you'll see is in the body, it is JSON, but it's not JSON also. It's kind of like it's coming back as a string basically. So if you do a console dot log body, let me clear this so that you guys can see. So it's coming back, but it looks like a JSON, but basically it's going to be like a string. And I remember from the project, you guys were doing it, right? Aaron, your project had it was coming back as a string, right? And you had to parse it into a JSON. What function did you guys use? Do you remember?
JSON.parse.
JSON.parse, correct. So you have to say JSON.parse and then body. And then what am I looking for? Let's see. Oh, you know what? Let me do one thing. I'm going to copy this so that I can see it better. Go back here. JSON file. This one. Okay. Okay. It's much better. So this is how my data is coming. So you see it's not in line. So this kind of gives you an indication that it's not pure JSON. It's returning you as a string. So you have to parse it into a JSON format so that you can actually use the dot and then get to it. So let's suppose I want to get to the title. So in my code, I cannot do body dot title. It's going to give me an error because it's not like in a JSON format. You see this undefined. So whenever this happens, make sure you guys use JSON.parse. Let me comment this out. So I have parsed it, and then I can use title. Okay, so do console.log. And it shows me the title. And similarly, this has year, rating, rated, release. You guys know how to get to these ones, right? So just do a dot and then put that value over here. Okay. More important point over here is we use Ajax in JavaScript. In Node.js is called request. Similar functionality. It's a little bit easier, I think. Just put in the URL. Right in the callback function. The callback function has 3 arguments: error, if there's any error; response, more important is the status code to see 200 if it was successful, and then all your data is going to be inside this last one, body. Of course, you can put it as data if that makes more sense. Okay. Any questions on the request? Okay, so next is the exercise for the same one. You guys can use the same key. I'll write it down over here. It's trilogy. Okay. Make a call to this API and then let's see what it is asking for. Provided a starter, created an application which takes in a movie name. Okay, right now in the previous example I hard-coded the movie name, so you guys are going to take an input as the movie name. Okay, so this means when I run my code, I would be saying whatever my file name is and then a movie name. Okay, and when I enter, it should and then if I put a different movie name, it should bring me that information. All right. Okay, the easier one is if you have a movie with a single name. Okay. The harder is provide the user movie name as many words as possible. So what happens if I do this right now? Let's suppose I have my code. If I do this, what does Node think over here? Yep. 2 different arguments or parameters. Yep. And why does it think? Because of the space. All right. So in the harder one, the bonus part is you have to figure out how do you combine both so that Node.js kind of takes it as 1 instead of 2. It's not going to be space. If you add a space, then this becomes second argument. All right. All right. First, start with a single one. So you just put a single movie name, and it brings you all the information. And okay, so what you have to get the release date. Oh, okay, just the release date. So I guess this one, released. This is a nice tool. If you guys haven't seen it, it's called JSON format. I use this a lot. Whenever I kind of get this data, want to see it properly, how it looks like, I use this a lot. So it's kind of nice tool. Kind of parses. It validates also that if your JSON is correct or not. That's also kind of nice. And then formats it nicely so that's more human readable. So this should take you guys to the end of the class. This is the last activity. There's one more activity and we'll post it. I'll upload that. It's called sync versus async reading. Take a look at it. It's kind of good to know. Not as important at this point, but I'll post that, upload it to GitLab. After this class, I'll upload all the solutions also. You guys can take a look at it. In the next class would be the last day for Node.js for now. We're going to look at npm, Node Package Manager, kind of try to install some of those. And then on Saturday, I'm teaching, we'll go back to a little bit of JavaScript, a little bit of advanced JavaScript. And everybody's face changed as soon as I said JavaScript advanced. Yeah. So it's going to be the part of JavaScript that I don't agree with, but it's I have to teach that. So
I like our experience coders say.
Yeah, the part that you will see on Saturday is included in recent JavaScript versions to attract programmers from Java, C# kind of background. It's like total doesn't make sense, but it's there. But you guys, if you guys haven't learned any programming language, it's a good concept, definitely a very important concept to learn. Whether it's JavaScript or Java or C#, the concept is very important. It's good to know. We'll see that on Saturday.
Thursday, Black Friday, Monday. Thursday, yeah. But I'm not gonna. San Antonio. Boardwalk. Or is it something else? That's how it was here. I've been calling like the wrong name for a while. Like it works. This is Boardwalk. What was that? Riverwalk?
So by default, it starts at 0 and cuts out 1, 2. Cuts that out.
Okay, so this is what I found out. We're talking about we'll talk about this on Thursday also, but we were talking about installation of the package locally and globally, right? So when I install this with npm install request, it's actually installing it into your local local folder. Okay, if you want. So when I went to the new directory and I tried to use request, it gives me an error. Okay, I have to run that same thing again. But there's a way if you want to do it. It's called, if you add this flag globally, then I guess it will install, it will be available to all your projects. We'll look at this on Thursday again, but if you are running into this issue, so just do a install again or do a -- globally.
Can you uninstall the packages once you've installed it?
Huh. I'm not sure if you can,
So if
let's
you
see.
install something global and then you realize you don't want it in the project,
Yeah. Well, you then just don't use it.
or if it causes an issue with someone else.
Yeah, npm uninstall -g. Try this one. Yeah. So see, if I uninstall it, it gives me the same error back, and if I install it and then I run it, no error. Okay, and then yeah, you can use the uninstall. Since I didn't install it globally, so I don't have to do. If you want to uninstall the global version, then you do add a -g here.
I would start there. And if you need to get more sophisticated, okay. Again, you'll probably get you started to what you're looking for now. And then here we cover yeah, should be what's that? Get notes over your website. At least it's the same as what you've been learning for the past like JavaScript. So fancy to start doing it. No. Oh well, that's we're quite a bit away. So, but yeah, learn Node first. You'll need it. Is jQuery widely used? I would say so. It's pretty popular, but for most parsers, people are starting to kind of abandon jQuery just because jQuery.
All right, let me know if you have any questions. This is how the solution. This is how I coded it.
If you want to keep your packages small, your application small, it's best just to use
If not, then I will see you guys on Thursday.
It basically is just a reiteration of already defined JavaScript function, but it's more kind of like a user-friendly way.
That's not something great. That's like
Like when you actually go through the extract file, you don't know what that class does exactly.
Yeah, that's me.
Just how you assume those things.